we have already studied about the immune system, and we know that whenever any antigen enters our body has the ability to produce antibodies against it, and it also produces certain memory cells, and these memory cells can recognize that antigen in future and can guide our immune system to produce antibodies against that antigen. The whole immunization programs are based on this principle. So let us first study about active immunization. In active immunization, a small dose of antigen, that is vaccine, is introduced and antibodies are produced. Later on, whenever this pathogen enters our body, these antibodies are produced in large number with the help of B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes guided by memory cells, and they neutralize that antigen. This is called active immunization. But in passive immunization, our body is not able to produce that particular antibody against that antigen. For example, in case of tetanus, so prepared form of antibodies has to be injected in the body called as anti-tetanus serum, ATS, and they combat that disease. Similarly, in case of snake bite, prepared form of antibodies or antitoxins have to be introduced in the body to combat that particular toxin. This is passive immunization. So, active immunization and passive immunization are the two types of immunization programs. Now, with the advancement of genetic engineering or recombinant DNA technology, we can produce a large amount of antibodies, that is monoclonal antibodies and vaccine, with the help of yeast and bacteria. Now, let us study about some abnormalities of our immune system. In normal case, our body is able to recognize the self cell and it does not produce any antibodies against its own self cell. But in autoimmune responses, the body treats its own cells as non-self cells and start producing antibodies against it. There are many diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis. These are autoimmune responses. Then second abnormality is allergy. In our surrounding, there are so many pollutants like pollen grains, dust, mites. We come across all these pollutants every day. But some people are so hypersensitive to these pollutants that they start showing symptoms like wheezing, sneezing, itching. This is called as allergy. So, these agents which trigger those responses are called as allergens. These may be dust, pollen grain, animal dander, mites, or so many other common allergens are there. These allergens, they stimulate the production of specific antibodies which are called IgE. These IgE are responsible for all these symptoms like watery eyes, sneezing, wheezing. So what happens? These IgE, they stimulate the mast cells to produce histamine, and this histamine is responsible for this immune response. So such people have to take medicines like antihistamine, adrenaline or steroid. Now let us study about the human immune system. Our immune system is divided into three parts: lymphoid organs, lymphoid nodes and lymphoid tissues. Let's study them one by one. First is lymphoid organs. Lymphoid organs further can be divided into primary lymphoid organs and secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs include bone marrow and thymus. These are the places where lymphocytes are produced or mature. First is bone marrow. Bone marrow is inside the bone. They are basically responsible for producing the specific types of lymphocytes. Likewise, the thymus is present just below the heart. Its size decreases as we grow older, and by puberty it is almost non-functional. So both these bone marrow and thymus are actually responsible for maturing the immature lymphocytes into specific B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. So those which process in thymus are called T lymphocytes, and those which are processed in bone marrow, they are called as B lymphocytes. Now comes the secondary lymphoid organs. Secondary lymphoid organs are actually the reservoirs of lymphocytes. They may be tonsils, spleen, Peyer's patch or appendix. They actually store these lymphocytes, and these lymphocytes actually attack the pathogen whenever they enter the body. One of the very common secondary lymphocyte is spleen, which is also called as the reservoir of blood, because it has the ability to produce the blood cells in case of excessive blood loss. It is also called as the graveyard of the RBCs, because when some RBCs become non-functional or they become very old, it processes them, it kills them. So the spleen is a very important secondary lymphoid organ. Next comes the lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are present in the neck, armpits, groins. These are actually the places which can trap the pathogen and can exaggerate the formation of antibodies from lymphocytes. So these lymph nodes are actually accelerating our immune responses in case of infection. Then comes the lymphoid tissues, that is MALT, which is called mucosa associated lymphoid tissues, which is constituting about 50% of total lymphatic our immune tissues. So these are present in the respiratory tract, digestive tract, urinary tract. All the mucosa has got it. So these cells are able to trap the pathogen when they enter and neutralize them. So this is how our whole immune system works